Hi there. Welcome to Family Worship. This morning, we're going to talk about a really interesting story that's in the Bible. It's about two people. One person is named Abraham, and he has a beautiful wife at the age of 89 or so named Sarah. The title of our story today is It Okay to Lie? We're going to find out by looking at the lives of these two people as they're traveling and have arrived and anticipating being in Gerar. We're going to pick up this story in Genesis, and that's the first book of the Bible, so I want you to go ahead and open it up and turn to chapter 20. And we're going to start with verse 2. It says, "And Abraham said to Sarah his wife, said of Sarah his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, had Sarah brought to him." Abraham lies to the king of Gerar, King Abimelech. He tells him that Sarah is his sister. Now, as we go into this story, we will find out that Abraham is right. She is his sister, but she's also his wife. So Abraham tells what you would call a half-truth. But even a half-truth is still a lie. And we need to keep that in mind. And then we'll see in this story why even the half-truth created a problem. Let's continue and let's read on into verse 3. It says, "But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, Behold, you are a dead man." I don't know about you. We're going to start right here. But if God came to me in a dream and told me I was a dead woman, that is not something I want to hear. And I don't think that's something you want to hear from God. And you'll notice here, Abraham tells the lie, him and Sarah. And there's no mention that they petitioned God, that Abraham even petitioned God when Sarah was taken away. But we see God moving here, moving to protect and to intercede in their behalf. So he tells King Abimelech in a dream, he's a dead man. That's some awful language. And I know I would not want anybody to come, especially God, to call me and to tell me that. Now, he just doesn't tell him, he tells him why he says it. He says, let's continue in our verse 3, and it says, "Because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife." Now, I can imagine about right now, Abimelech's like, "What? What do you mean?" So at first, Abimelech, listen to what he says. Go to verse 4. He says, "Now, Abimelech had not approached her. So he said, Lord, will you kill an innocent people?" And you notice that he said an innocent people. See, he attached his people to him. So it would not only be him that would be killed, but his people as well. So he goes and he starts defending himself. I mean, I can understand. And he says, listen what he says. Go to verse 5. "Did he not himself say to me, she is my sister?" He says, Abraham told me that she was my sister, that she was his sister. How was I supposed to know? In so many words. And he said, and listen to this now. So it wasn't just Abraham, it was Sarah too. She herself said, he is my brother. So I not only had her words, but I had his words, but I had her words too. They both lying. They both lied to me. It says, in the integrity, continuing in verse 5, "In the integrity of my heart and the innocence of my hands, I have done this." They provoked me, Lord. They made me do something that I didn't even know I was doing. And now you're going to kill me? And this is the part I really love. Because here's a man that is in a nation. He's a king. And he's having a conversation back and forth with God. And God is listening to him. He is listening to what Abimelech had to say to him. What a loving God. He just didn't say, you know, you're a dead man, hello, bye. He listens to what he had to say, and he says, and look at verse 6. Then God said to him in the dream, yes, I know that you have done this in the integrity of your heart. And it was I. Listen to this now. This is a part that's going to really floor you. He says, it was I who kept you from sinning against me. Now, let's take the, hold on now. Hold on. And I listen to this. It was I who kept you from sinning against me. Because he said, you know what, Abimelech, I know you. So he interceded. He interceded. Now listen. He says, therefore, I did not let you touch her. I know you innocent. And you know what? I kept you from touching her too. So listen to this. God is interceding still to protect Sarah and Abraham, even though they have lied. But look, Abimelech is in a fix now. Because he done took something, which makes he was sinning too. He took what he wasn't supposed to take. But it was a custom of that day, you got to remember. And Abimelech has got to deal with this matter. Even though they lied, it didn't give him, he lied, he sinned because they lied, but it didn't clear him. See, his rationale did not clear him as far as God was concerned. So God addresses him. He says, now then, he says to the king, return the man's wife, for he is a prophet. Now, wait a minute. Abraham wasn't a prophet before this, but now he's a prophet. See, he done got promoted. He's a prophet. So that he will pray for you, and you shall live. Now, listen to this part, because God knows Abimelech. So he puts a little bit more strength to it. He says, but if you do not return her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours. You either return her or you can kiss goodbye. You and your family and everything else you own, it's gone. So you need to return her. Now, I know that you didn't mean to do it for the integrity of your heart. But the fact is, this man's wife you have, and you better return her. Abimelech got up early the next morning, if you continue to read in the story. And you know, he came and he called Abraham. He calls Abraham. And you could see that if you look in the next section, in verse 9, it says, then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, what hast thou done unto us? And what have I offended thee, that thou hast brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin? Thou hast done deeds unto me that ought not to be done. So Abimelech calls Abraham to explain his behavior. See, when people lie to you, have you ever been lied on by someone and now you get to face them face to face? Face to face, explain it. He could have, the king could have just said, okay, give her back Sarah, y'all can go, you know, go and not had that conversation. But Abimelech wanted to know the answer. And he wanted to deal with it. Because even though he was in this sinful environment, a sinful kingdom, he's committing sin, inside he had a fear of God. He had a fear of God. And there was something there. And so he says, you know, Abraham, come on in here. You're going to explain this. And I don't know about you, But usually when I confront people, it's they don't really have any real, no decent reason sometimes to even have done what they did. But you know, as a Christian, still forgive them. Still forgive them. So then Abraham, after the king has talked to him, if you go to verse 11, Abraham gives a chance. He's given a chance to speak. And look at what he had to say. And in verse 11, it says, and Abraham said, because I thought surely the fear of God is not in this place. Who is he? He's walking and he looks and he decides. Sometimes, you know, people may look run down or they may look like they don't know God. They may be sinning and they may, but doesn't mean they don't have God in their heart. And that's where Abraham went wrong. Because these people, this king, had a fear of God. And let's continue reading in verse 11. And then it says, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. He thought that they were going to kill him for his wife. And then he explains more in verse 12. And it says, and yet indeed she is my sister. So he tried to explain now. I didn't really tell a complete lie. It was only a partial lie, but still a lie. And he says, she is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife. And then he starts to explain further in verse 13. And it says, and it came to pass when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said unto her, that this is thy kingdom, this is thy kindness, which thou shalt show unto me. At every place whither we shall come, say of me, he is my brother. So he tells Sarah, he tells the king, I told Sarah to lie. This is something we planned when we first got started. Because see, the king, if you listen to the king's language, he's like, what have I done to you? He said, well, it's not you. It's just something that we do all the time. You know, sometimes we get into lies and we keep lying and we keep lying. And that's just something we do. It's not good. Because you can see in this case, the lies caused Sarah to be placed into peril. If he had not lied, Sarah would not have been taken away. Let's keep going in the story. The king Abimelech accepts Abraham's apology. Wow. I don't know about him, but I suppose if you had God talking to you in a dream and he tells you what to do, and you know you're dealing with God, not just Abraham, you say, okay, let me just go. The king accepts his apology. And you look at verse 14. Verse 14 really, to me, shows something about the king. And look what the king does. In verse 14, it says, and Abimelech took sheep and oxen and men servants and women servants and gave them unto Abraham and restored him Sarah his wife. He done gave him all of this, but that's not all that he gave him. It says in verse 15, and Abimelech said, behold, my land is before thee. Dwell where it pleases thee. So he gave him, no, wherever you want to live here, go ahead. Here's some oxen, here's some sheep, here's some maid servants, here's some female servants, male and female. You got it, go, just go, enjoy yourself. But that wasn't all. That was not all. And he turned and he looked at Sarah. And he says, oh, this is a part, verse 16. And he says, and unto Sarah, he said, behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee a covering of the eyes unto all that are with thee, and with all other. Thus she was reproved. In other words, he vindicated Sarah. Sarah, the way you came is the way I'm sending you back to your husband. And everybody knows you're okay. I didn't touch her. And you can notice that was mentioned earlier in the story, that he hadn't touched her. And it's very interesting. Now something very interesting happens in the story. And I think it's very, because it's not the first time I've seen it. Abraham gets to pray for for the king Abimelech and his nation. Let's read the last section, last chapter. And he gets to pray. So Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his manservants, and they bare children. For the Lord had fast closed up all the wounds of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Whoa, this is tough. What this is saying is, a plague had been placed on the kingdom of Gezer, Abimelech's kingdom. All the wounds were closed up. There weren't going to be no children being born and no children being made. That was it. God had already started, and it took the prayer of Abraham, to turn it around. Interesting, huh? Abraham had to put on his priestly robe. Because remember I told you he was not a prophet before, but now he's a prophet. And that role is twofold. See, there's one part where the prophet speaks from God to the people. And then there's other time the prophet speaks in behalf of the people to God. And in this is his first act. Abraham is speaking in behalf of Abimelech, which is the people, to God. Abraham assumes a new role. But we cannot let this story pass without noting a few things. Sarah ended up in peril because of the lies. Because of the lie, King Abimelech took Sarah and committed a sin. And because of all of that, his nation is placed, because of the lie, is placed under a plague. And the plague was not released until Abraham prayed. You know, sometimes we can find ourselves lying, and we think it's perfectly okay. But you can see there's consequences to lies. People can get hurt, decisions are made, things can be delayed, all types of things can happen, all because of a lie. So the question I ask yourself today, is it okay to lie? The answer is no. The answer is no. We are not to lie. Lying is not a part of the character of God. God is a God of love. And we as his people are not to lie. See, God said he would send his son to die on the cross, and he did. Jesus died on the cross so that we as sinners, can be made right with God. So what am I saying to you today? If God did not lie and does not lie, then we are not to be, as God's people, we are not to be lying either. Not one lie, not a partial lie. Because like even here, Abraham gave a partial lie. It was still a lie. It still had effects. Let us make up in our mind today that we are not going to lie, and not even a partial lie. God didn't lie. And he's also given us a promise. And that promise is that he will return and we will go back with him. And if he hasn't lied yet, he's not going to lie again. He's not going to start lying. He's not going to start lying. Let that be a part of our character. And you have a blessed day. And I'll see you at our next episode of Family Worship.